Hi. Okay, so it's been a little bit. I made a video, said, oh, I'm gonna make some videos, and then didn't make any videos. I have a good reason. I have a decent reason for it. One of those things is the personal stuff that I talk about in my life, and the other thing is what I'll get into in a second. But first, hi, I'm Cozy if you're new here. I like to talk about sister wife related shows here on YouTube. I do like to remind you that these videos are for entertainment purposes only. These aren't facts, they're just my opinions about public figures sharing their lives publicly on television. Cool? Cool. Alright, so before we hop in, I'm going to say this may end up being a two-parter. It really just kind of depends on how things go here, because I spent my entire morning in the emergency room today. I'm all right. I just have been having some really, really awful abdominal problems, like just a lot of pain in my abdomen, really high up, like in my stomach and down my right side. So we got a little concerned, worrying that could it be gallbladder? Could it be just a number of things? So we went in today. They did a CAT scan. Everything's fine. They did blood work. Everything's fine. But suffice it to say, I tell you they did blood work because there is a definite bruise on this arm. I covered up because I know some people are not okay with seeing that. So if you get a flash of it, I do apologize. But I don't want to put another Band-Aid on it because it's really uncomfortable. So we're just going to do our best. So basically, we're going to get it through as much of episode 9 as we possibly can. And if I have to stop, I'll make a part 2 and I'll come back with it really quickly. I don't want to leave you guys waiting, especially since you've already been waiting for this episode. I do have episodes 10 and 11 ready. So I'll be filming those too as things are settling. I do have some medication to take, so fingers crossed I'm gonna feel better and it'll all be good. I lost my mouse and I need that for my notes because I watched 3 episodes back to back to back. So if I didn't take notes, we were not gonna get this. Ya know? Ya know. Okay, so let's start with the Davis family like we always do. We go family by family instead of going scene by scene because I think it's a little bit easier to keep track of what everybody's doing. So let's start with the Davis family, and oh boy, this family is becoming significantly more dramatic than they were in the first few episodes. So today we're going to meet April's brother, Billy, and Billy is getting ready to move, I think she said to Florida. So he's getting ready to move far enough away that they're not going to hang out all the time. I'm going to scoot this a little closer to me. Oh, that was a lot closer than I thought. Okay, and so she wants to spend some time, have a lunch with him before he goes, so that, you know, they can catch up before he leaves. And so she's like, hey, you're moving. Speaking of moving, Danielle moved back in, you know? Like, honey, you wasted no time. I get it's a TV show. They probably cut things. Or they very much so knew what was going on when they came into this. Either way, it's just like, oh, honey, that was not subtle. So Billy is not on board with this sister wife thing. Not at all. They did a preview, and it really sounds like he's not on board specifically with Nick. And I think it's really interesting to hear from these family members, because we've met parts of Danielle Merrifield's family. We've met her parents, we've met her brother and sister-in-law, and they're not really on board with the things that Garrick's doing. Her parents are a lot quieter this season than they've been in seasons past, but whatever. Of course, we've met Naeem's mother, who is very against this, but the Sah-Hoodens have going for them that culturally, this isn't exactly outside of the norm. They probably know polygamous families, and so I'm sure that maybe while they don't all agree, they probably have a little bit more people surrounding them that understand. The Davis family is already oddballs insofar as Nick stays home, the women marry each other and go out to work and support him. So it's kind of interesting to get a perspective from their family when this is so different from anything else. And Billy is like, let's chat. And like I said, April's like, oh, Danielle moved back in. And Billy is definitely shaking his head and making some negative noises when April's like, yeah, we're going to start dating again. I get it, Billy. I do, because you just had somebody move out and leave because you wanted to start dating again and everybody was sort of uncomfortable with this idea, and now you're going to do it again? It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And she calls him out, and he is flat out like, why would you bring someone else in? This dude does not pull punches. He is not here to just pretend he doesn't have an opinion. He is vocal, and I'm here for it. And April's like, this is what I want. And Billy's giving her this, like, sarcastic, good luck. And he's like, he tells us that he is not the most supportive of his sister's lifestyle. he really, really believes that April is just collecting women like Pokemon to keep Nick happy because he isn't just happy with one woman. And Billy's like, are you truly satisfied? And April's like, yeah, I am. And all I can hear is the song from Hamilton where Angelica Schuyler's like, he will never be satisfied. I will never be satisfied. In fact, the name of the song is Satisfied. If you haven't heard it, good song. So she is like super happy, she says, that he asked that because that's the whole point. And Billy's like, you're getting played. And she's like, no, we're not. He keeps going. He points out that Nick stays at home and does nothing while he just keeps collecting these women that April's bringing to him. And April does this like surprise blink. And it was like, Nick doesn't do nothing. Listen, I give him that he must do something. He stays home and takes care of Vera, so he's doing something. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I do the cooking, the cleaning, the primary child care. I do a lot of things while my husband goes out and works. And so I get that there's a lot that goes into making a household run. There is. But Billy is not focusing on that. In fact, Billy wants to know, before Vera, what was it that Nick did? Because he doesn't see Nick staying at home, and as Nick has put it before, thinking, as a valid way to do things. I don't have a lot of room to talk. I'm sure there's plenty of people who would be like, you sitting around watching reality television and making YouTube videos about it isn't a valid way to spend your time either. Probably not, but I enjoy it, and the people that I hang out with seem to enjoy it. So we're going to do it anyway, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about my brain condition. We're going to talk about whatever we want. So once again, probably don't have a lot of room to talk there. So it comes to no surprise that when Billy is asked by the producers, do you like Nick? He says, I don't care for his character. He really feels that Nick is taking advantage of these women and just playing some sort of part. But April says that things seemed super great when they bought the house. Everybody seemed really cohesive. They were all happy together. And then once they started talking to Danielle about dating, that's when everything fell apart. And April thinks it's because Danielle is scared she's going to get replaced. I really feel like it's more that that Danielle is scared that she's going to have to legally marry this individual and could potentially stand to lose everything if that person chooses to leave, or if that person just turns out not to be the person that they thought that she was. So Billy's like, you do know that none of this is normal. And April gets super defensive, and she's like, it's not normal. Yes, I know. She's getting a little heated, but I don't really get how she's also heated and frustrated with everything that's going on, and yet completely blind to Danielle's feelings. I'm sorry, I thought I had silenced that. Billy says, you guys are rushing everything. And April's like, yeah, I felt like I rushed things with Danielle, but it was so good. And Billy's like, yeah, so good she left once. He asks her a very important question. It's like, do you think that Danielle is just telling you what you want to hear? And April does appear to take pause. But she says she thinks that they're all in agreement about moving forward. You can see it a little in her face, though, that she's now considering this as a possibility. Billy's like, I love you, but I think you're screwing yourself by bringing in another woman. That's a really reasonable take. I like Billy. He's not a yes man. He's not just going to sit here and be like, if this is what you want, if this is what makes you happy, then that's what we're going to do. No, he is going to ask her the hard questions, and I like that. April's like, I know that Billy wants to protect me, but this has been my dream, to bring in more wives and have more kids. And once again, I want to point out that Danielle has no children. April and Jennifer each have one child, and I am not shaming them for those choices. Honestly, I never thought that I would have any children, and I have 3. So you're allowed to make that decision on how many children you'd like to have and all of those different things. But you don't need to focus on adding more wives to add more children. Why don't the women that Nick is with already want to have more? What is the real situation? I'm not saying, once again, that they're required to. I'm saying it just sort of feels like this weird excuse. Like, we have to bring in wives for all these children. Is it that everybody's only allowed one? I don't understand. April feels like being in a plural relationship is more love to share. I would say that most of the time it's really more chaos, jealousy, anxiety, those kinds of things to share, but hey, okay. Billy expresses his concern, and April says that there's a chance Billy could be right, and pursuing a 4th wife could cost them Danielle. but insists that Danielle said she's ready to date. And when they see the playback of this, I imagine it's not going to go over well. I mean, unless it's manufactured drama just for television, in which case, who cares? But if Danielle ends up leaving again, April says it would be heartbreaking. But that's what she's asking for by continually pushing this idea of adding someone else. You told Danielle that you were going to wait for her to be ready. You told her that having her was more important than adding another wife. And then you want to add another wife. She confuses me. So let's go on to the Sah-Hooden family. And I went really hard on Nyla and Naeem last time. I did. So I'm going to try and see if we can make this better. They hop in saying they're coming off of a bad date with Alexis. So they're going to meet a couple of friends. So Shamir and Mike, who are polygamous Muslim friends that Nyla met in one of their poly groups, are the friends that they're going to meet up with today. And they're also seeking a sister wife. So they invite them over to discuss, or not over, but out for lunch, to discuss how things are working out, get a little insight from them, since they've been in this place before. Shamir has been married to Mike for about 5 years, and they're seeking a sister wife. She says that people think that polygamy just revolves around intimacy, but they're trying to create their own community. I've never thought necessarily of my family as my own community. I kind of think of my community as including people outside of that, but I suppose that's a way to describe it. And she says, when she says that, I think that 100%, that is the perception in the world. And there is a fairly decent reason for that. Polygamy historically really hasn't been the best arrangement for women. Whatever people want to tell you, it just hasn't. It often leaves women feeling slighted, raising children on their own the majority of the time, causing anxiety, jealousy, and men stretching themselves so thin and creating families so large they cannot reasonably accommodate them with their time or their finances. It's a struggle for literally everyone in it. This is not in any way to say that 100% of the time that is the case, but statistically it is the more likely option. Plural families tend to fall apart and remix themselves into all sorts of crazy amalgamations. So that means that incest tends to follow polygamous families because a lot of polygamous groups very much so tend to be closed and look inward until those family trees become family wreaths. And once again, I am not saying that every family does this, but a lot of the families that we've been introduced to over the years have had familial connections that are a little, shall we say, close for comfort. The Browns and the Dargers both spring to mind, being that, I mean, not just Cody and Janelle's connection, but my understanding is that Cody's adopted children are cousins of his. I can't remember exactly how far. Obviously, Robin's first husband is Christine's cousin. The Dargers, 2 of the wives, are identical twin sisters. I mean, those things are very close. So the Darger kids are both siblings and cousins. It's a lot. You also have the Jeffs group and the Kingston clan. They're all notorious for this. Every single one of them. And that definitely gives a perception to this practice, whether or not that is something that a specific individual is doing. So Shamir's right. People are going to look at polygamy in a lot of negative fashions because that is most of what we are seeing. So Nyla asks, how is dating going? And Shamir says, it's slow, but it's going. They just met someone. They're kind of in that talking stage. I am too old to understand what that means. I'm going to be 100 with you. I am about to turn 35 in 9 days. 9 days? 9 days, I think. From the point when I'm filming this on the 17th. It should be 9 days. And so I don't really know what that means to be in a talking stage. I don't know. Is that the stage before you make it official? I don't actually know. I'm an elder millennial. It was your friend went and told a boy you thought he was cute, and then you sort of danced around it, and then you made things official, and then like 3 weeks later you broke up. I'm assuming because this sounds very middle school to me. I don't know. But Nyla's like, oh, so this is new. And she shares about their date with Alexis and how Alexis is 26. And Shamir's like, shut up. What could you have in common? I get that. Being on a different level from someone else in life can be a lot more challenging, especially the older that you get. There's less and less to talk about. I get it. But they laugh and say that 26 is way too young for their liking. Fair enough. That seems reasonable to have that preference there. But Nyla reminds us that Naeem is probably wishing that he hadn't agreed to that date with Alexis, and that he's realizing that Nyla, as the wife, was right about it. This is a little bit passive-aggressive, girlfriend, just a little bit. But the producer is like, hey, have you spoken to Alexis again since that date? And Naeem says, no, we did not. And Nyla gives this sort of like, I told you so smile. And we get it. It's not a good fit, but can we move on? Because this girl is going to get her feelings super hurt on national television. Come on. So Mike asks Naeem how things are going. And Naeem's like, well, and shares what happened with Keisha and how she didn't show up. And he thinks that Keisha must have had friends in her ear and pulled back. And Nyla's like, so how do you find people? And Shamir agrees. It is really difficult because the pool is very small. The pool of people who are actually legitimately interested in being a sister wife, not just having sister wives. Because the thing you have to consider is that there are plenty of people who, being the first wife, might be like, oh, I guess we could have sister wives. That's all fine and dandy, but to actually want to be that plural wife instead of being the first wife, that's a smaller pool. It just truly is. Think about it. A lot of the women we've seen on these different shows discuss how being the first wife is so important. And so it's a tough situation to be in. And Nyla's like, you have a lot of women who are 100% against it, like me. Women who want to be taken care of, but not be a family. So living separately, having a separate family, understanding that he has a separate family, somewhat similar to Robin Brown's mom and stepdad situation, where they did not live close together. They were not really involved with each other. It was two separate families. Or you can also have the women who want to move that other wife out and be the only one, sort of like Robin Brown, in my opinion. Nyla says that polygamy, a lot of single women look at a couple and they think, I stand something to gain from this arrangement. And that gives her anxiety. I honestly can't look at a situation where I would think someone would stand a lot to gain from that. But sure, I guess, if that's something you're interested in, maybe you do. She's nervous about other people's motives and it makes it so much more challenging. And Nyla says that it has to work as a family. And too many people think me, instead of we. And how can you be a family that way? And Shamir agrees that finding someone of substance is absolutely the hardest part of all of it. Give me a second. I'm just trying to see something here. Okay. And Naeem asks Mike and Shamir about their family background. Did you grow up in polygamous families? And Mike's like, no, my family was not polygynous, which is a word for a family with multiple wives and a single husband. But his family does approve of the things that he does, or at least support them. Shamir's mother is dead set against it. And Naeem's like, yep, my mother's the same way. Shamir's mother, Shamir asks, did your mother, Jamila, did she grow up in it? And Naeem's like, no, but she knew about it growing up. And so they talk about how Shamir's background, she came in as the third wife, and Mike says second/third, and now only. That's the interesting part. His first wife did not want to be in polygyny. And so 2 months after Mike married wife number 2, she left. She divorced him and took off. His second wife was already close to Shamir. They were already friends. And Mike says that it was decided that he was to marry Shamir later and marry the other woman first. And Nyla takes a breath and says that dating in polygamy is a challenge. You have to see your spouse dating. And since you're married, you don't see them in the dating world. And now you have to be okay with seeing your spouse on these dates. Mike says when he and Shamir married, she was his ride or die. And Naeem's like, it's always good to have one of those. Naeem asks about Shamir's jealousy. And she's like, yeah, it was there, full throttle. I didn't attend Mike and his second wife's wedding. I went to work instead because I didn't think that I could handle that being their day, especially with Mike and Shamir not being married yet. She admits she had a breakdown at work and had to go home. Mike's like, you never even told me that. Naeem's like, so what helped you work through it? And Shamir's like, well, the second wife called me on the honeymoon, keeping that line of communication open, just wanting to check in on me. And that really kind of helped her to see that they were doing this for a reason. She wanted to see how Shamir was doing, just make sure that everything was going to be okay. And Mike said his second wife had a lot of people in her ear, and she just wasn't ready for it at the time. So Shamir says, I'm a lot older now. I feel more secure in myself, in my relationship. And she asks if that's an experience that Nyla's had, like moments of jealousy. And Nyla's like, no, I haven't. And Shamir's, that's amazing. Comes off sort of flat and disbelieving. Nyla's like, she kind of gets this like wistful sort of voice for just a second and says, I don't think I have jealousy because I'm confident in my marriage. But if I do start to experience it, I don't have to act on it. She's like, at my age, I know my feelings are not facts. And in my brain, as soon as she said it, I could hear people rolling their eyes and referencing Ben Shapiro. But that's not his quote. Here, this whole thing came to me. His quote is, facts don't care about your feelings. Meaning that people cannot change immutable facts to suit the feelings of an individual. Right, okay. Nyla says her feelings are not facts, meaning she is taking ownership of the feelings that she has, knowing for a fact that no matter what she feels in her heart, that doesn't make it true. If she feels like, oh, Naeem prefers this other woman, I'm feeling this, that doesn't mean Naeem actually prefers a different woman. Her feelings are not factual. They're simply feelings. So it's more about her taking ownership of her own feelings, where the whole Shapiro thing is about people taking ownership of the facts over other people's feelings. Does that make sense? I don't know. It's a little nuanced, and I actually thought coming from Nyla, the way that she phrased it was really important and very mature and very understanding of that we are the only people who control how we feel. I really liked that. And so it was probably a long tangent. No one actually cares. But it was just, it struck me that the way that she controls her own emotions was very grown up. I really appreciated it. But Naeem's like, I think it's because we never got to those stage in the relationships. And Nyla gives him this look that comes off just like a touch passive aggressive. Like, really? That's what you think? So Shamir tells us it's easy to say you won't have jealousy when you haven't been in this situation. But I have. And she thinks Nyla needs to get in deeper, get her feet wet before she can really say what she's feeling. So Shamir gives him the advice, keep communication open, and if you do, you'll be just fine. So Mike's like, the immediate red flag is the treatment of my wife. He's looking 50, 60 years down the road. He is not looking for something short term. So it takes a lot of patience. And Nyla's like, listen, with everything there's risk. If we never took risks, we'd never do anything. This could create a rift in our marriage. Jealousy could happen. She says, Naeem may no longer desire me as a wife anymore. But the benefits outweigh the risks, for sure, in her opinion. And if they let risk hold them back, they'll never know. Naeem's like, you know, if things thrive, they could be 10 times better than what they are right now. And Nyla kind of has this look on her face, like she is just now realizing it could be possible for Naeem to fall more in love with a second wife. And I think that's part of what she took away from Mike and Shamir's story. I could sense a little bit of awkwardness there, especially when Mike was like, Shamir's my ride or die, she's my only right now. This was a third wife, and he clearly felt really strongly for her. And Nyla's seeing that there's a chance that she might not end up being the favorite wife. So we did those two. I'm going to end it here for right now and go and like take my meds, settle everything. I'll come back for a part 2. Don't worry. I'll be fine. I just need like 20 minutes and then I can film a part 2 and be good to go. But I wanted to get at least this much out for you guys because I feel like you deserve it. You guys have been really patient waiting for me. And I know that that's hard, especially when the last thing I said was, hey, I'm not doing so great. I don't have any updates about the IIH. I don't have any updates about brain surgery just yet. When I do, you guys will be the first to know. I am sorry that I haven't been answering comments as quickly as I would like to be. This is not about a you guys thing pushing me or anything. This is about me. This is about me and my desire to be more connected. So I'm also considering potentially looking into like a Discord channel or something where we can all kind of chit chat a little bit more. But I'm not sure what we're thinking. If anybody has any thoughts, suggestions, ideas, go ahead and leave them in the comments. I'm really excited to hear them all. But I would like to find a way where everybody could be as connected as they want to be. And with that, I'm going to go take my meds, get something to drink, maybe try to like eat a few crackers or something, and then